How did you get to New York City?
Man, Delta Airlines flight 436 out of New Orleans. It was Delta Airlines. I just don't. No. So I started in New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans. I'm from the. You know, my family is like deep 7th generation New Orleanian. But I grew up in the shit burbs. I always say I'm from like the Staten Island of New Orleans.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Chalmette, Louisiana is what it's called. Chalmette, and then Slidell. So I'm from the Staten Island, and then my parents moved us to like the Yonkers, for high school. But I started in the city proper, and just I'm very fortunate that I started at a time when there wasn't all these eyeballs on stand up. There wasn't all this like it is now for people who are starting now, where it's like, I remember starting out, man, you had just psychos in like a good way. And I know how that sounds, but like most open mics, that's where you start doing stand up. And for those of you listening wondering, how do I start? That's how you start. That's how you start. I know this is the thing about podcasting. It's a great medium, but then sometimes I worry because it pulls back the curtain too far. Yeah. Because I know I meet younger, or people who just want to start stand up, and they've already thought their way out of it because they've listened to too many podcasts about doing stand up, and they're piling up all these questions and all these doubts from like, here's the facts. Just start. Don't take a fucking class. Don't do that. And I know people are going to argue. I'm right. I'm sorry. Classes exist to line the pockets of a comedian. I believe that, and I'm not gonna fucking shit on or fault anyone who figured out a way to make money, but like, I just disagree with the concept of stand up classes wholeheartedly. It's someone, maybe you're shy, maybe you're afraid to get up in front of people, and if those are the cases and you can't overcome them on your own, I have to ask you to ask yourself if you really want to do this. Because you have to want to do those things. Yeah. I remember my first time. I was fucking petrified. I was a nervous wreck for the 48 hours leading up to that first time I got on stage, which is only going to be about 5 minutes, by the way. And it was worth it. All of that fear and terror and like, oh my God, what am I doing? By the time I got off stage and realized, oh, that's it. I just overcame that. The door was wide open. And I feel like a class is just charging you money and, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks of your time to just knock that out in 5 minutes. Yeah. And you're never going to learn something that you can't learn in your first 2 to 3 open mics. You're going to learn everything you're going to learn in a class for absolutely free in your first 2 to 3 open mics.
How did your first open mic come to be?
Dude, I remember my first open mic vividly. And it was 20-something years ago. Yeah. I remember it vividly. It was a place called Amberjack's in New Orleans. It was in the Lakeview neighborhood of New Orleans, which is like the Upper West Side of New
Different
Orleans.
vibe.
I'm just comparing it completely to New York. It's called Artists of New York, baby. We got to bring it back. There's a place called Amberjack's. It was a seafood restaurant that had a bar area that was not part of the restaurant. So they had an open mic on Wednesdays that would start at 8 p.m., but you had to be there for 7:30 for the sign up. Back then, maybe only fucking there's 8 or 9 comics per open mic. That would be wild to say in some cities. But like, I remember I showed up, I signed up. The guy running the mic, a very lovely man who actually, his name's Jerry. He actually showed up at one of my shows in New Orleans like a few Christmases ago, and just showed up and just like was like, "Hey, man." And I almost fucking erupted into tears. Yeah. Because I hadn't seen him since like Katrina. So that's, You know what I'm saying? And like, I just hadn't thought about this guy in a while, you know, and he was, you know, he wasn't someone who was like trying to be a comedian professionally back then. He was an older guy. He's probably in his 60s now. He was an older guy back then. He was just doing it as like a hobby, but he loved it.
Yeah.
And just seeing him, I was just like, I was like, he's still alive.
Yeah.
but he, you know, he took mercy on me because he knew he asked, and I told him my first time. So he didn't put me up first. He put me up like mid lineup, but I remember there were 3 audience members. Exactly 3 audience members. It was a young couple sitting up front, and then some random ass guy sitting in the very back of the room by himself, pounding Bud Lights. I remember that. I remember he was pounding. He had so many bottles of Bud Light. But I remember the comic who went up right before me was a dude named Butchie Beverly. Great name. Wasn't very good at stand-up, but was also, again, those back then, it felt like people went to open mics to scratch that artistic itch versus nowadays what appears to be this like fame itch.
Yeah.
So like back then, it feels like back then, like you never thought about actually were you going to make it or not until you were doing it for at least 3 years. Those first few years to me were all about, am I good at this or not? That's how it was for me. Because I remember that first time going up after Butchie, who just told very over the top, dark, twisted jokes. Giant black dude with long dreads, very nice guy. I would get to know him over the years, you know, but kind of fell off. You know, he didn't stick around after 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? But I remember. I wonder where he is now, Butchie. If you're listening to this for some crazy reason right now, reach out to me. If that is your real name, because I don't think it is. Butchie Beverly, too good of a name. But I remember going on. I remember him bringing me on. I remember the fucking insane pounding, just anxiety that like where it feels like there's an actual kick drum in your head and your heart is just playing your heart's trying to be Lars Ulrich and just double bass your fucking anxiety in your skull. And I remember getting on stage. I remember hearing my voice amplified for the first time.
Yeah.
Something no one prepared you for.
Yeah.
Right? And I had read this book. I had gotten this book called The Step-by-Step Guide to Stand-Up Comedy. That's what it's called. I read it. This is why I say don't take a class too, because I bought this book and I read this book and absolutely zero of the artistic stuff in the book ever. I remember reading all of that and being like, none of this makes any sense to me, really. I remember the book ended, it had a joke writing formula in it. And the guy was like, here, the reward for reading this book is, here, this formula will yield all your material. And it didn't. I remember trying it and being like, this is stupid. I don't want to do this. I don't agree with this at all. And I don't even think I know what I'm fucking talking about yet. The only thing that I took from that book was he advised you to take the mic out of the stand so that you felt you seemed more present. That was the only thing that book taught me. But that was also something I would have figured out in that moment, because I remember my natural instinct was to take the mic out of the stand, and then I remembered being like, oh yeah, I read that in that book once. But it's, you know what I'm saying? It's like you figure it out in your first time. Yeah. And the joke writing formula wasn't a real thing. In fact, it informed, I can't write formulaically. I've learned that about myself over the years, where it's like whenever I try and structure the writing, but if I just let it come out and push the boundaries of how I can say everything and how I can get my point across, then it all comes out clean. Then it all comes out beautifully. But once you try and get formulaic, it becomes it's like running with with a blindfold on. It's gonna suck.
Was that moment a long time coming? Had you wanted to try your hand at comedy for a long time? I
knew from a very young age that I wanted to do something. I knew, early teens that I wanted to do something performative. That was in me from the moment I can remember really remembering. Or like that age where you start really thinking about that sort of stuff. I knew, from 13 years old that I wanted to do something performative, but growing up in Louisiana, unfortunately then anyway, your options were limited.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Louisiana's dog shit in education. I think it was ranked like 46th when I was growing up. Now it's ranked like 59th. It's not even ranked in the United States anymore. You know what I mean? It's fucking terrible. And just like, like, and it's not, I'm not going to blame teachers because they don't get paid shit, and that's fucked. I'm going to blame our government and our society. Like, being a teacher should be as hard as being a surgeon. You should have to be as educated and as capable. And because that was the thing, I look back and I'm like, I never knew what it was like to have a teacher who pushed me, who challenged me, who even attempted that. I just had public school servants. You know what I'm saying? They just showed up and clocked in, and I was just a dumb kid off to the side, with undiagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder, staring off into space, daydreaming. And it's like, that's your job as a teacher, to notice that kid and try and rein him in and challenge him. But that never happened for me. But again, I'm going to blame myself more than that. Anyway, yes, I knew from a young age I wanted to do something. I just didn't know what that thing was. And I mean, I got to tell her this once, so it's pretty cool. I was watching an episode of the Larry Sanders Show.
Yeah.
And Sarah Silverman had a reoccurring part on that show where she basically played like a fictionalized version of herself. She played a young comedian who I think was also named Sarah, who gets a shot to do stand-up on the show, on the Larry Sanders Show, which was a late-night show.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that episode, and she went on, and she was doing like her material. I would find this all out later in life. But I remember watching her set and being blown away by it. Watching Sarah Silverman's fictionalized version of herself's set on the Larry Sanders Show. And I was just like, I loved every fucking, I was like, this is mind blown. And I was, fucking 19 years old. And I was just like, what the fuck? And then that is when I just retroactively went back and just studied stand-up. Because growing up, I didn't really, you hear a lot of comics be like, I was watching Seinfeld when I was 11, and I was listening to George Carlin albums when I was 14. I'm like, well, I didn't have that. I didn't do that. I wasn't that guy. I was a music kid. I didn't, my dad let me listen to Richard Carlin when I was 15, and then I'd never look back. I'm like, well, my dad didn't do that, I had to kind of discover stand-up on my own. But once I did, then I went back and just started then I started watching the old Carlin specials, the old Pryor specials. I had seen Eddie Murphy's Raw way earlier and thought it was fucking brilliant, but at the time was like, I don't know if I could ever do that. And then after deciding that was what I wanted, I remember going back and watching that and be like, I think I can get there. It's going to take a while. And then I just became this, and that was 19 years old, 20 years old. Now I was just the biggest fucking stand-up fan, but a specific style of stand-up. And also, now how do I get there? You know what I'm saying? Now how do I begin? And that took a few years of figuring out. And I started when I was like 22 years old.
How did you decide this was the thing? How did you know that it was what you were supposed to be doing?
It felt like, because after seeing, because that was the thing, before that, in my head, stand-up was always like hugely big and performative, and you had to be mega famous, Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
Or it was stuff I was seeing that wasn't resonating with me. A lot of the style of comedy from like the late 80s, early 90s, and a lot of just, look, I mean, I don't diss it, but like I've just never really, I respect anyone who can do that classic setup punch style of stand-up. A lot of my friends do that. And I respect them, and a lot of them, some of them I love, some of them I don't. They know they are. But like, some guys, Sam Morrill, Mark Norman, Joe List, I can watch those guys all day.
Yeah.
Ruby, those guys get up there and they're pretty classic setup, punchline, setup, punch, setup, punch. But they do it right. They've got personality behind it. They've got sort of like an essence to what they do. But that I see a lot of copycats of those guys. I see a lot of copycats of those guys. I see a lot of people trying to fit into that mold. And I guess that's something that's always sort of turned me off is when I watch someone who I feel like is not trying to be themselves. They're trying to be an archetype. They're trying to fit into a mold. And I just sort of like, nah, I don't know. And I feel like I just saw a lot of that before I became a lover of it. When I would catch on like HBO late at night or, and it would just be like, hey, I get how this is funny. It's just not what is capturing me. My biggest comedic influence is the show Mr. Show with Bob and David on HBO. It came out in the mid-'90s. I saw it in real time. I was a young high school kid. I remember that blowing my mind and making me realize, oh, I like comedy. And then from there, I went back. It was a lot of retroactive. It was a lot of seeing something and then going back. But from there, I went back and watched The State, which came out a year or two before that, and then went back and watched Kids in the Hall and realized like I loved comedy, but that was like that sketch sort of, Mr. Show was brilliant. And I got to open for David Cross for a couple of years, and that was mind-bending. But I think what made me ultimately want to start was after seeing Sarah and after, having that like Bob and David, Mr. Show influence, it made me realize that like stand up was about your opinion more than anything. It was about perspective more than it was jokes. and I mean, I'll stand by that statement. I know a lot of fucking comedy people, both comedians and fans and producers alike would argue with that, but I disagree. It's about perspective more than it is about the jokes. You have to have perspective first.
And did you feel like you had a perspective to share?
I did. I felt like I have a point. I still feel that way. I feel like maybe it's not for everyone, but like I'm trying to give you an insight into my psyche at all times. Not because I'm trying to like be like, I'm the right. My whole goal is like, I believe in the concept and the beauty of human flaw. I think it is the one undeniable truth that unites all of humanity. We are all flawed. It's an indisputable fact. We all experience flaws. I'm not going to say suffer flaws. I'm going to say experience flaws. And we are all terrified of those flaws. And we hide them from each other, and we hide them from ourselves. We do our best to not show our flaws. And my argument is, but why? Because if we all just did that, we would all accept each other. I truly feel that way. If we were all just pretty open about our flaws, and I'm not saying, walk around bragging about them. I'm not saying, but just be honest, then I think we'd be a better place, in a better place as a society. So that's my thing. My perspective is I revel in my flaws, and I will expose them to you. I will show them to you, and I will show you how I've learned to live with them, and I will show you how not only have I learned to live with some of them, I've thrived because of some of them. And if I can do that, then you can do it too. Then maybe if you can laugh at me and my human experience with my human flaws, then maybe you will feel better about your own and start to accept your own and start to share your own. And that's my perspective. That's a major, bedrock of it. So yeah, and I just realized at a certain point, I'm like, I want to say something.
It's a very humanizing component to comedy.
Oh yeah.
Because I think if you can get people to laugh at something, you can get them to open their mind and consider it.
For sure.
How did you get from New Orleans to New York City?
Oh, I basically was doing stand-up for a few years. I made the decision I remember it. It was right after Mardi Gras 2005, which Mardi Gras, I couldn't tell you the exact date, but Mardi Gras is always in February or March. It changes every year based on when Easter is. But I remember it was so Mardi Gras, you've ever been to Mardi Gras?
I have.
Mardi Gras in the weeks leading up, and then specifically the 3 days before Mardi Gras Day. That Saturday, that Sunday, Lundi Gras, which is the Monday before Mardi Gras. Those are the craziest fucking days. Mardi Gras Day itself is actually not that insane. Most people don't even do shit, but it's mainly families. All the parades on that day start rolling at 6 a.m. and by 5 or 6 p.m. there's really Mardi Gras is done. Then it's just people partying and reveling in the street, and then they kick everybody off bourbon at midnight, even though you just come right back. The horses will roll down to signal the end of Mardi Gras, and then people just pour right back out on the streets. But whatever. But I remember I was walking back to my apartment, drunk, of course, and I decided I was leaving. I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get the fuck out of here. I just gotta go. And that was, February, March 2005. I had a little bit of money saved up. And then, lo and behold, August 29th would roll around, Katrina, right? When I decided to leave, I was like, I want to do it, January 1st, get the fuck out of here, 2006. Katrina hitting, that'll throw that threw everything into upheaval. But, you just kind of knuckled up and slugged through it. It's why when the pandemic hit, it was scary, but it was also like, I remember this feeling.
Yeah.
Of like, you just got to sort of persevere and just adapt with whatever is going on, and you'll get through it. And so in early 2006, I think in February, I left for the first time. I moved to LA first. I went to LA before I came here. I went to LA for a year, and I only went to LA because I thought I had to. Back then, there were no podcasts really. Social media was not really a thing yet back then. So there wasn't all this information out there about where you should do. You just knew it was New York or LA. And I remember back then. So do you remember the Comedians of Comedy tour?
Vaguely.
So the original Comedians of Comedy tour was Patton Oswalt, Brian Posehn, Maria Bamford, and Zach Galifianakis. So late June 2005, they come to New Orleans to do the House of Blues. Tickets were sold out. We couldn't get tickets. But me and a couple other comedians were hanging out at a bar, whatever, doing whatever, probably after a shitty mic, or maybe not even after the show at all. But I remember one of our other friends calls us and was like, listen, those guys are at this bar right now. He was a bar back at this bar. He's like, they're at DBA on Frenchman Street. And we were like, holy fuck, really? So we went. I remember we showed up expecting them to just be like surrounded by fans. And they weren't. It was Zach. Maria was not there. I do not think she was at that show. But it was a dude named Dave Anthony in her place. Zach Galifianakis, the real one. Brian Posehn, who's also on Mr. Show, so that was crazy. And then Patton Oswalt, who I also fucking adore. Yeah. And they were just there hanging out. And we just sort of like soft approached them. And they were all like, hey, what? And they were cool as shit. Started buying us drinks, hung out, talked to shit. We went and took them to this late night place to eat, a place on, oh man, for those of you who know the city, it was a place on Decatur called Anjali. R.I.P. That place was fucking amazing. It was just this like late, it was a dive diner. That's the best way to describe it. Think of your favorite dive bar and turn it into a diner. That's what Anjali was. R.I.P. It was fucking amazing. But we took them there, getting some grub, and they just let us pick their brains. And at the time, all three of those guys lived in L.A. Yeah. And all three of those guys made it seem like L.A. was the place to go. And I'd also heard that before. So I moved to L.A. first in 2006. And liked it. Never loved it. But, it was still like an overwhelming, you went from being in a city with maybe 20 comedians to L.A. Yeah. Fucking 1,000 comedians and all these open mics. And a lot of people are fucking dickheads. A lot of shitty assholes out there. But then some great people. Some of my lifelong friend, Kyle Kinane, one of my closest friends in comedy, who's also one of my favorite comedians. I met him that year. It's insane, Chris Fairbanks, who was an Austin guy before, and met him there that year, a lot of those, fucking Anthony Jeselnik, who, is awesome and, superstar now, but I met him back then, all those guys are superstars. I think if you're still around being funny at this point, you're fucking, that's the goal. That's the goal. A side note, I think no one realizes that enough. It's like the goal of being a comedian should be that you get to do this at a level that is not comfortable, but a level that is acceptable to you forever. That's the goal. That's not, stop thinking, I'm going to get 2 Netflix specials and then a TV series on HBO and then the Mark Twain Award. It's like, that's how you are guaranteed to fuck yourself over. The goal should be, I want to get to a place where I can do this for a living on my terms for the rest of my life. That's the goal. And that goal will look different or that level of achievement will look different for everyone. It will look absolutely different for everyone, and it should. But in my opinion, it should not be the money and the exposure. It should be the fucking artistic satiation that you feel from getting to constantly create comedy and perform and do comedy on your terms for a living for the rest of your life. That's the fucking goal. That's the beauty of it. But anyway, I went to LA for a year, and after a year of being there, I just kind of talked to all these like ex-New York guys who were all they weren't even realizing it, but they would just be talking about New York and not even realizing they were convincing me. Like, I was like, fuck, because I wanted to come here first, but I just thought LA would have been a smart move. And then I realized, like, being there in LA for a year, I realized, like, nah, man, like, New York is probably, for what you want, a better option. But I was like, fuck, but I'm already in LA. And then this random opportunity, a guy I knew that lived here who had to go back to New Orleans, he had a room. He's like, do you want to sublet my room for a few months? It was insanely cheap.
Whoa.
And it was in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which I knew nothing about. And I'd been in LA for a year at that point. I was like, you know what? That feels serendipitous. So drove back to New Orleans, sold my Saturn, I'm not shitting you. I moved here with $1,088. That is exactly how much money I landed with at JFK on that Delta flight. 2 suitcases, $1,088. And I was moving into a place that I already paid the first month's rent on, but it was $425 all inclusive. That's why I did it.
Yeah.
I was like, $425 on. And then I got to Bushwick and realized it wasn't a bedroom at all. It was a fucking cubicle, basically. You know what I'm saying? It was like a built, they just walled off a part of the living room. And that was my bedroom for the first 3 months I lived here. But, got a shitty string of day jobs over the first couple of years and just slugged it out. You know what I mean? But I knew the moment I was here, it was the right choice. Even though I will say, and I think you might be able to attest to this as well, and some of your listeners certainly might be able to, that first year in New York, it will break you if you're not here for the right reasons. If you're not sure, or I don't know, we'll see how it goes, you're going to be broken to fucking pieces. You can only survive that first year if you want to be here. You'll learn that. You'll learn that fast as fuck. I learned fast. Those first 4 months specifically were miserable. Jesus Christ. Like, the open mics were harder. The scene was mean. That was the difference. LA was nicer. LA everyone was a little bit nicer to you. Yeah, they were assholes, but they were LA assholes. They were assholes behind your back. You know what I mean? They were mean, but once you got here, no one gave a fuck. You had to prove yourself multiple times before they even started looking at you. Everyone was it was so much more. The LA scene at first was just like way too inviting, almost in a way where you were suspicious. And then you realize, oh, that's because that's stylistically what LA is all about. About being friendly to everyone because you don't know who's who. But then that breeds a lot of insecurity and a whole lot of insincerity. Whereas here, everyone's a fucking asshole at first. But that means once they're nice to you, you can trust that they're being genuine. Once they're open up to you, you can trust, oh, that's for real. But that first 4 months here, man, that shit was rough.
How did you know that this was your place? You said it felt correct. What do you think it was that made you feel that way?
Man, it was a Saturday in May. I wish I could remember the date. I just remember I got up, I went to a neighborhood I'd never been to before, which was Fort Greene, Brooklyn at the time. one of my best friends who had been living here for years, I grew up with him. He had, it was like the first few months I'd been here, I just had never been to his apartment. And it was a Saturday, and he invited me over, and I went, and it was one of those, like, I mean, you live in Brooklyn now, you get it, like one of these perfect ass Brooklyn days where it's just, especially spring here, Jesus, it's like, it's a crisp 76 degrees. So you can wear you wear a light coat, sunny, everyone's out in the streets. It's fucking nice. I was broke as shit, but he was making a little bit of money. So we, walking around that like Myrtle, Washington area, just, we day drank a little bit. We're just talking shit to locals and meeting people, and he's showing me around. And then I get this fucking message on MySpace. Back then, that's how you got some bookings. Like, you just found shows on MySpace and reached out to them, and sometimes they'd reach back, oftentimes not. But I remember this one guy reached back, and it was a show in Park Slope, and he's like, "Yeah, man, come through tonight. We can give you some time." And I was like, "Oh, cool." So me and my friend went, and I remember it was a place called the Brooklyn Burger Bar, which no longer exists, and it was an ambush show, which means, and you've probably been to one of these, it's a show where the customers of a restaurant or bar have no clue there's about to be a comedy show, and they get just ambushed with it. And depending on where they are in their meal, they have to sit through it. But I remember this little pocket of people stayed, and everyone who went up before me was doing pretty good. And I remember I went up and just had my first like great set in New York, and it changed everything. It was one of those sets too where it wasn't like me, it was me just doing the shit I'd only been working on since I'd been in New York, and just speaking this new version of myself to this crowd. And they just, a crowd of, maybe 7 people, seriously, 7 people, but they were engulfed in every single syllable and laughing in that way where, like, that's something you start to like pay attention to at some point in your career. But this has always been a thing with me. I noticed the quality of laughter over the quantity. I think some people are satisfied just making an entire room chuckle. I'm like, I get it, whatever. I prefer to make people laugh uncontrolled. Like, I like the kind of laughter you could tell it's like they're not even, they couldn't prevent that. They couldn't stop themselves from doing that. They're laughing out of sheer reaction. They're just like, they are psychologically, subconsciously unloading joy right now in reaction to what I'm saying, and they can't control it. And it was that kind of shit where people were just like, you could just feel it. We're like, oh, this is real. And afterwards, I had a nice hang, met a few more comics, and then me and my buddy had like a nice, just like a chill night. And it was like, that was the first like night or just day here where I was like, I woke up where I woke up the next day and wasn't immediately like, fuck, I hope I didn't make a mistake. Like, I knew. I woke up that morning and was like, yep, this is it. I did the right thing. And then it was like a Hollywood script level shit where it was like, and then I just started seeing things differently. I started knowing which mics to go to and which to avoid. And those led to more shows and more. And then and that's how you do it, really. You just start doing the shows where you fit in. And yes, there is that concept, like, challenge yourself, be uncomfortable. I do agree with that, obviously. But I also, a big comedian standpoint I've always disagreed with is that you should be able to make anyone laugh. I just disagree with that. I think you should be able to make yourself laugh first. But I think if you are going to be able to make anyone laugh, then you're compromising your integrity. Like, I disagree with giving the audience what they want. I think you give the audience what you want. That's being an artist. And the challenge to yourself is whatever you give them is something that you want to give them more than the last thing you gave them. And you are your toughest critic. So if you can convince yourself, if you're a true artist, I believe, you are your toughest critic. So if you can convince yourself that it's good, you're already 70% of the way there. Now, let them come to you a little bit. I don't think we have to spoon feed fucking audiences comedy or go to them at all. I think you put yourself out there, and if they truly love a craft, or if they truly love, it's like, I think great movies, great music, great other art do this exact same thing. They simply put their best version out there, and it's on you to look at it and get it. Like, there is responsibility to the audience to fucking get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like this idea of like, nah, and also a lot of it's bullshit. You hear these fucking stories of like, man, this guy just went up on stage and the audience was a bunch of Hell's Angels bikers, and he made them all laugh, and they carried him out of the building. That never happened. A lot of it is hyperbolic bullshit to make you believe that whoever's telling you that version of it has the right path. I'm not saying I have the right path. I'm saying I have the path that I believe in most, which is put what you think is great out there, and know that if it truly is, the right people will catch on. But this whole like, nah, man, you're a comedian. You should be able to go into any room and kill. Well, then you're a bad comedian. Then you're a base level crowd pleaser. And great, good for you. But if that's what you want, remember earlier I said, I believe it's all about, creating on your terms for a living for the rest of your life. If that's what you want, to be a cruise ship corporate event guy who can just go on stage and riff and make fun of someone's haircut and talk about how gay that guy is, and oh, look, y'all have been together how long? Hey, that Ted and HR's been dating her too, I hear. Whatever. It's like, some people want that. Some people want to just be like the guy who's just funny no matter what, and just can't ever say anything serious. And it's like, but okay, great, but then I prefer to have a more personal perspective and, be coming from a place of this is who I am, and let's identify with each other and laugh at me because what I'm saying is truly funny to you because you get who I am. Yeah. You get who the fuck I am. And I think a lot of guys too look at someone like Dave Attell, I think is hands down the GOAT, the actual living GOAT. I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot, but like, I do think Dave Attell is like, if not he's up there. And yeah, he doesn't say anything. He's not taking anything seriously. He's up there just firing off jokes by the minute. But every single fucking joke he says, you feel 100% Dave Attell coming. It's always coming direct. It's like, none of it, it's anti-generic. You know what I mean? It's so authentically him. And that's my argument too. It's like, yeah, he's up there doing one-liners, great. Or just three-liners, but it's coming from such an authentically real perspective. And that's the goal. You know what I'm saying? Versus he's not up there trying to crowd please. He's not up there trying to win over everyone. He doesn't fucking care. He's up there telling you what he thinks is funny. And he doesn't fucking care if you like it or not. Yeah. And that's why he's one of the greatest, if not the current living greatest. But like, anyway, so yeah, and I came here and.
Well, you said the first 4 months were miserable. Oof. You had this great set, and I think you said things just, what I heard was momentum. Like something happened where things began to open up for opportunities or just work. What did you see? Like what happened that allowed you, maybe it was serendipity, maybe it was just good timing, but how do you make sense of the momentum that you finally were able to generate to propel your career?
I mean, I'd like to think this, because it's hard to know, but I think at the core of it all, it's all, I mean, comedy maybe specifically still is a meritocracy in the sense of like, if you are putting good work out there, the right people will eventually see it. And it just felt like, I truly started leaning into who I was at that point in my career, or that point of my growth. I was just like, I know my perspective now a little bit more, and that still has to grow. Once you realize what it is, you've still got to grow it, and do it like, first of all, don't label yourself. And I mean that, and I don't mean that just like in the therapeutic, like, no, you're not a loser. No, you're not a nobody. I'm saying like, no, you're not an edgy comic. No, you're not a highbrow comic. No, don't do that to yourself, because guess what? It's a turnoff. I've seen this so many times over the past 15 years of guys who are, and girls who are like, yeah, you know, man, I'm the fucking, you know what I do? I'm the highbrow, sort of like, I'm the smart comic. You know what I do, man? I'm out here. No, man, seriously, I talk about race and I really break it down. No, man, I'm the guy who I could tell you the difference between the genders, man. No, you know what? I'm out there. I'm just so weird. Most people can't handle me. Once you do that, it's you're setting yourself back 5 years, because now you are telling the audience who you are instead of showing them who you are, right? And now you got to let them put it together. If you have a label put on you, you got to let the other people do. You got to let fans and the community of comedy say what kind of comedian you are. That's why I look, I all due respect to Dave Chappelle, but don't call yourself the GOAT. Don't do that. The GOAT goats don't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think Dave Chappelle is I absolutely think he's a fucking great comedian. But I just, all this lore that comes around where it's like, no, man, you can't, like, and I've seen it time and time again. It's like, once you do that, you are telling the audience that you are not genuine. That's how I feel. I feel like because you're focusing now on the exterior when you should never be focusing on the exterior. If you ask me, you should always be focusing on what's inside, what's coming out of it. It's like being a restaurant that spends all of its time on the design and the sign, but stops paying attention to what's happening in the fucking kitchen. And now, yeah, sure, You've labeled, you're a fine dining establishment. Great. And the sign's written in a font that makes it look French. And you've got, the wait staff's very beautiful. And look, it's such an ambiance, but the food sucks. The food sucks. You fucked up. Go the other way. You make the fucking great food and, make sure the restaurant's nice and there's no rats, but let the fucking food critics, let the fucking foodies, let the fans of your establishment spread the word as to what kind of food you're putting out there. You know what kind of food it is. You ain't got to say it. You just got to do it. You just got to make it. That's how I look at it. Just be who you are as a comedian and let them decide what to call you. But you know what, even though you already know what you are. Just be it. Don't say it. Be it. And that was what I just felt. I mean, but that was sort of back then. That was my mindset of just like, I'm not gonna try and sell myself. I'm just gonna be myself. I'm just gonna lean into what I do. I'm gonna let the work do the selling. And that, it's a longer, harder path, but it worked. It's like people started responding to what I was doing on stage. And that's how it goes. You generally it would go, you do the open mics. You do the open mics, A, to hone your shit, but B, to win over other comedians. That's the reason you're doing open mics. You don't realize it at the time, but there's no bookers hanging out at open mics. You know what I mean? There's no agents hanging out at open mics. None of that shit. It's other comedians at open mics. And you meet other comedians, and then through those other comedians, like, hey man, you want to do my show? Me and this other comic, we run this bar show. And like, okay, cool. And then you break into that round, that level of like lower tier bar shows where, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're absolute fucking dog shit, but they're booked. They're booked shows. And then in that layer of shows, that's where you get to the second layer of show, the third tier of shows, which are like the better the more established bar shows, okay? And at those bar shows, that's where you start to meet the bookers. That's where you start to meet the people who are like, oh, I book UCB. Oh, I book this bar show. And you're like, oh, that bar show. And that's the upper tier of bar shows where it's like, these are the shows where it's all comedy fans and tastemakers and bookers and actual representation there and bigger name comedians. And once you start getting into that tier, then the world starts to open up. But you got to go through those first few tiers first. And I'm speaking how it was back then. I don't know what it's like now. I know, last 2 years, I would be in Atlanta filming the show I was on. And there's this club in Atlanta called the Punchline. And they reached out to me once and they're like, hey, we need a headliner on Sunday. Want to do it? I was like, hey, whatever. I'm in town. Let's do it. And afterwards, I stuck around to watch the open mic out of just sheer curiosity. I was like, I haven't watched an open mic in 20 fucking years. Let's just see. I mean, 15 years, man. Let's just watch. And I was savagely disappointed, not because comics were bad or because it was an open mic. That's the point of an open mic. It was that there were no crazies. There were no psychos. Everyone was trying to be famous. You had two comedians that night who were going up for the first time, and they both had camera crews. I mean, I'm doing quotations, but they had their friend with the little camera rig for their iPhone and like a little lighting rig. But two guys had that, filming their first open mics, looking for clips to put online from your first fucking open mic. That's disturbing to me. That's disturbing and fucking stupid. But that's the world now, I guess, is no one wants to be good. They want to be famous. No one wants to be an artist. They want attention. Influencers. I hope that part's cyclical. I don't think that part is. I think some things never go away, and that mindset will never go away. But as we've seen with other detrimental, shitty, cancerous mindsets, they can also just fall by the wayside and just live in their own little bubble for a while. That's what I hope happens to that idea.
What do you think that says about the culture? Not to overextend that story so much, or that observation about people wanting to be famous rather than good. I think you see this in a lot of domains of life. Yeah. I don't know how deeply you thought about this, but what do you think that is indicating about the times we're living in?
I think, look, it's hard to say because, more and more jobs are being automated and now AI is a full-blown thing. So that's going to start taking away more job opportunities and more, education has been just dwindling faster and faster over the past 20 years, for sure. So people are learning less and getting stupider. Someone else pointed this out to me a couple months back. No one wants to be educated for the sake of being smarter anymore. People just want to learn a job skill now. And it's like, while I get it, that is important. There's also something to be said about going to college just to get smarter and then figuring out what your job's going to be after that. Like the amount of people who have careers that have nothing to do with their college degree is probably 60% of college grads.
For sure.
Maybe more. And so I think there's just less and less options out there for a fulfilling life. So people are on social media or they're watching streaming shit all day. And to them, they're only seeing the good parts of fame. They're only seeing the look how happy and amazing that life is. Ooh, slay it, queen. So, ooh, or king. Slay it, king or queen. Funny enough how in both situations you're only referring to two genders. Huh? I thought, what about in between? What about someone who doesn't want to be a king or a queen? What are they? Prince? Princess? That seems fucking binary. Slay. How about just slay it human? Why do they have to be royalty? But also, I think, we're just, especially the generation below us is just, millennial, post-millennial, has just been inundated and is slammed with this constant social media feed to where they're like, well, fame is an option. And it is. but they don't realize what it will cost. You want to be the hawk to a girl? You know what I mean? You want that. And some people do. But I'm like, that person is a joke now. That person probably doesn't really like talking about it anymore. That person probably wants to go back and not do that little fucking street side interview.
No.
You know, it's like, but people look at that and go, well, I think that's the problem, is that it's attainable now, but it's attainable for all the wrong reasons. And people look at fame and go, well, that's an option for my life. If I can get that, then everything afterwards is easy. It's like, no, everything only gets, that's the thing I'll say about this life. And I mean, I'm not famous. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying when you doing what you love for a living does not make life easier at all. It just makes it more yours. That's the best way to put it, in my opinion. Like, I've got more of my time is my time. You know what I mean? And that's great. My time is my time. I adore that. But don't make it easier. It only gets harder, but you get better at it. That's all there really is to it. Life doesn't get easier. You just simply get better at it. The struggles remain. You just get better at dealing with the struggles. You know,
you talked earlier about the book that you read when you first started out in comedy, and the one thing that you recall is taking the mic out of the stand.
Yeah,
and you've touched on a lot of things that I think have seemingly been pieces of advice along the way during this conversation for comedians. One of them is just doing the thing, getting out of your head and actually practicing. If you were creating your mini book of advice for comedians, and all of this is subjective based on your own experience, but what have you learned along the way? What I'm sure people come to you for advice on how to become someone like you, who is an artist, who has their own time, who is doing their work that satiates them in some meaningful way and supporting themselves. What is that advice that you give? What else is there to be learned from all the years you've been doing this about what actually matters?
I mean, first thing I would say is don't listen to anyone. Don't listen to advice. No. But I mean, the hardest thing I had to do that I still struggle with from time to time, but every time I'm able to pull it off, I'm right, and it's worth it, and it does the right thing, is believing in myself, right? And I know how tacky that sounds, and I know how whatever, et cetera, but it's a fact. Like, if you believe in yourself, it's all accomplishable. And straight up, you've got to learn how to do something. You've got to learn how to get good at it, how to respect it, how to understand it, how to become part of it, integrate yourself with it, how to live and breathe it. You have to learn, but that's part of life. I think that is life. I don't think you should ever stop learning, ever stop adapting, growing, and changing, even if you know who you are. I know who I am as a comedian, and I'm still evolving. I will never stop evolving. That's part of who I am. I can also say this. All the shit I thought on day one, I was right. You know what I'm saying? It took, and some of it I didn't want to acknowledge or couldn't believe yet, but like all the things I knew about what I wanted and who I was on day one, I was right. And yes, it's been over 20 years now, and I'm still evolving into that version of myself. And that's the beautiful part. Is that I'm still in it. I'm still doing it. I think about this all the fucking time. Like, all the people I started with, and not only just in New Orleans, but all the people I met along the way, all the people I started with when I first moved here, like the amount of us who are still doing it is very small.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm dead serious. Like, let's just say in that first, 7 years of doing stand-up, I met 100 comedians that were all good. And all of us were kind of on the same level. 8 of us are still doing it. Seriously. 8 of us, maybe. And of those 8, only maybe 5 of us on our terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, and that's not an insult to the other three. I'm just simply saying, like, it's an alarming thing when you think about it like that. We're like, holy fuck, man. Like, it's hard. This shit is fucking hard. But that's to quote Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own, it's supposed to be hard. If it weren't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great. It's one of the greatest quotes of any movie of all time. I don't give a fuck. Tom Hanks, A League of Their Own. Gina Davis is the best player in the all-female league. Yeah. She wants to quit. He asks her why. She said, because it got too hard. And then he fucking hits her. Fucking lays that fucking Excalibur-esque statement in front of her and says, pull it from the fucking stone. You know you can. You're the only one. And I say that over and over again. I say it to myself a few times a fucking week, you know? And it's like, that's the most beautiful part, man. As I said in the beginning, my goal from the get-go, I didn't think about making money. I didn't think about being successful. I never cared about any of that shit till I knew I could do it. And I can honestly say it took about 3 years of open mics in New Orleans before I knew. I was like, yep, okay, I know. And then I had to get good at it. That was a whole nother fucking step. It was about 3 years of doing open mics. Like, no, I can do this. I'm definitely fucking going to do this. I mean, I was the whole 3 years leading up. I believed in myself, obviously, but I would never openly admit it to myself. Like, no, just come on, man. You just got to keep showing up, and you love it. And I did love it. I fucking still love it. That hasn't changed. That's the other thing. That part hasn't changed. Yes, there'll be ebbs and flows and ups and downs, et cetera, but like the love is only strengthened, man. I still fucking love this. And 3 years in-ish, around there, about 3 years in was when I knew I could do it. It took another fucking 4 years before I was like, okay, now I'm good. Now I'm good enough. And once you're good, now it's going to take another fucking decade before you can call yourself, before you can level up again. You just got to keep doing that. And I knew from the get-go, I just wanted to be an artist for the rest of my life. And that is my goal still. And I think that should be the goal. Like I said earlier, I'll repeat it because it's worth repeating. Create comedy or whatever your art is on your terms for a living for the rest of your life. That is the ultimate fucking goal of art.
You mentioned Dave Attell earlier, and the
prime example.
I would love to hear who in your mind is the epitome of that sentiment. Someone who is a comedian artist that you admire or you just regard in that esteem. You maybe hope to maintain the level of authenticity and career that they have. Who comes to mind? I
mean, we'll start right there. Attell, because you look at Dave Attell's path, and it's very interesting in the sense that like he blew up, if you will, in the year 2000 with that show Insomniac, which went for like what 3 or 4 seasons on Comedy Central, and then since then has been just his dedication and love of stand-up. That's it, and he's been doing it for long. He was doing it obviously before he got Insomniac, but since then he didn't rely on that. He didn't try and do an Insomniac too. He doesn't do a podcast where he talks about Insomniac. He doesn't do any of that shit. He just does stand up, and he's still showing up to spots on Tuesday nights and getting up there and joyfully fucking spitting fire. Like Dave Attell is a pure comedic artist. That is a pure artist right there. He's not trying to figure out a selling point. He's not trying to find an angle he can work. He's not trying to like monetize on one thing he said 20 years ago that people remember that just got blasted back into the zeitgeist because of a meme on fucking TikTok. None of that shit. He's simply going out there and doing stand-up at its purest form. And he doesn't fucking care about the result because he knows it's good. Because he trusts that the right people are going to fucking understand this. His most recent special, which came out in 2024, and I believe it's called Hot Cross Buns. It's a Netflix special. I think it's a perfect comedy special from start to finish. It is a perfect stand-up special across the board. And he did that at this point in his career. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's fucking beautiful. Like, for all the, look, I'm not dissing Seinfeld, but I'm saying for all the praise a guy like Jerry Seinfeld gets, he's only ever had, what, one comedy special? Maybe two in 40 years of doing it. You know, his achievement was co-creating that show. And again, Larry David was a massive part of that, you know, obviously biggest part. But you look at Dave Attell, who's, I don't know how old Dave is. I'm going to guess late 50s, maybe 60 by now. Just dropped arguably the best special of his career. And it's like, that's fucking gold. Like, to be that in it at that point in your life and still doing it at the highest level. Hasn't tried to cash it in, hasn't tried to sell out, hasn't, like I said, hasn't gotten lazy, and clearly hasn't stopped loving it. Like, I look at that because I see Dave when I'm in New York. I'll see Dave 2 or 3 nights a week, and you're like, he's still in it. It's like when are you a sports guy at all?
Sure, yeah.
You know how people would say, you hear all these guys who played with Tom Brady, who would say he still acted, you know, after his 3rd Super Bowl win, was still showing up to practice like he wasn't guaranteed a spot on the team. Yeah. That's Dave Attell. He's still showing up to 3 a.m., not that late, but, you know, 1 a.m. spots on a Thursday like he's trying to impress the booker. He's still showing up like he's got something to prove. And it's like, you don't. But he doesn't even need anything to prove because he knows. Like, that's... He
sounds like somebody who has just given himself fully to the art form.
Oh, indisputably, undeniably. Like, that man is... he is the personification of stand-up in so many ways. You know? And it's his... And like I said, like, yeah, like, you know, am I stylistically similar to Dave Attell? Absolutely not. Am I as funny as Dave? I hope to be one day. Yeah. You know, I'm trying. But, like, am I as dedicated and in love with it as Dave? Yeah, I could say the same. I could say that. Like, that's one, and I need someone I think any artist should look up to the Dave Attell. He's Springsteen. You know, he's fucking Philip Seymour Hoffman, but still alive. You know, you know, fucking Laurence Olivier. I'm just trying to put him in a different. Yeah. You know, he's Rakim. You know, he's like the guy. He's fucking the one. You know, he's I mean, who's I'm trying to think now? Fucking crossover into Meryl Streep. Here, I'll do the female versions. Christy Yamaguchi. Mia Hamm. You know, he's just the fucking... I mean, athletes, yeah, it's bad. People try and do this, the artist to... I just did it, you know, the artist to athlete comparison, and be like, it doesn't always work, because your body eventually fucking kicks it. Kicks it. You kind of hope your brain doesn't. You know, but yeah, man, I mean, Attell's the master. But I think just, you know, I believe and hope we get back to a point where the art and the integrity of the craft comes first for a majority of the people who are doing it. And then the money will follow. That's again, earlier I wasn't trying to dish Chappelle. I just did think it was wild that he called himself the GOAT, but I also think Dave Chappelle is one of the greats. But he also has said one of the greatest things he ever said was, be funny first and the money will follow. Yeah. And like, you know, and I've met Chappelle. He's an insanely cool, very nice, and again, great comedian. But I think all the greats live by that same rule of like, be great first, then worry about being rich. That'll come. That'll come with it. Yeah. Because it's not the other way around. You're not going to get rich first and then become great. Usually the moment you get rich, if you're not great already, you're done. But you can continuously get great and worry about the money. But the money will come. I do believe that, you know, like I said earlier, meritocracy, however dim that beacon seems right now, it's still there and will hopefully be brighter in the future.
Yeah. Sean, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Fuck yeah, Dan Riley. I want to make that. I want to make that your new merch. It's a shirt that says "Fuck yeah, Dan Riley."
It's great having you on, man.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.